matter how high-tech we have become, we always go back to some old and unusual traditions, especially coming up to Easter.
Yes, take the 40 days of Lent, for example. What was it for? Where did it come from? And to tell us more, we have folklorist Shane Lahan. Shane, what exactly is Lent? Tell us more.
Well, I've been dealing with customs, traditions, the dates in the calendar. For years, I couldn't work out what was Lent, when did it begin, when did it end, and so on. So the calculation for Easter, let's say, is the first Sunday after the first full moon after the equinox, okay?
The spring equinox.
The spring equinox. So that changed every year and so on and so forth. So then it was the 40 days. So I got out my calendar and I was counting back, and I worked out again, it's essentially the 6 weeks before Easter. So 6 sevens is 40, 6 Sundays. Yes. So 6 sevens is 42. And I said, hold on, that doesn't work at all. And then I found out, hold on, Sundays weren't included at all. So I took out 6 Sundays and that lifted us back to 36.
Yes.
So that didn't work either. We needed the 40 days. So they added in Ash Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the 4 days to make it the 40 days. So why 40 days?
Yeah.
So 40 in the Bible is a huge one. Moses was out for 40 days. Elijah was out. Christ himself was out in the desert for the 40 days. So they needed the 40 days. But if you think about it, Irish people, in particular in Ireland, we have a great tradition of people going out into deserts and starving themselves for 40 days, because the great tradition of the monastic tradition of Christianity in Ireland, which came in from Egypt, if you like, went right around and came in around Skellig Michael and those sort of places. There were lads there who were kind of almost at this time of the year letting themselves kind of almost die. That sounds a bit unusual, but because what was happening was that the whole concept was this was a period of stasis. You kind of stopped one end of the year and you began new life again. And they themselves went into that period of starvation, as it were. There's a huge tradition in Ireland of these monks. Mael Ruan, one of the great fellows from Tala in County Dublin, he used to be watching over his lads who were kind of, not eating and not doing anything, and he used to give them little bits of sustenance to keep them alive, to get them through the 40 days.
And what food was banned then?
Well, listen, everything was banned in a way.
Yeah.
Meat was one thing, but certainly all the dairy produce, eggs were banned, and then milk, butter, cheese, and all that. And there's a reason for that, okay? Because milk was very, very important. At the end, if you think about milk is the symbol of new life. When a mother gives birth, new nourishment comes out in the form of milk and so on. And therefore people would keep off milk during the period of Lent, so that Easter you were kind of reborn again, and the milk was the symbol of that. The egg, of course, was also the symbol of rebirth and life as well. So that was also forbidden. So that's why, of course, on Shrove Tuesday, we have pancake night, and we use all of the eggs. And then as we come to Easter, we celebrate with the eggs once again. So you've all of those sort of traditions and those sort of ideas. Definitely very, very different when you think about it,
But then is there ways that people maybe would cheat? Or sometimes I remember growing up, you sometimes you forget what you're off, and then suddenly you'd be like, you off that for Lent, and you'd be like, sorry.
Yeah, but there was great cheaters long ago, Megan. The big cheaters were the guys that came in the 12th century, the Anglo-Normans. They arrived in, okay? And they had to keep off everything, particularly the clergy. Think of the big heavy guys, eating away and so on. Lent came along. So they would go along and they would pick things which they thought were not meat at all. So the great cheats that we had, number one, were barnacle geese. So barnacle geese were things that people knew very little about, because, of course, they spend most of their time in Greenland.
Yeah.
They come over then to Ireland, but people never saw their nests. They never saw any of those things. So what happened is that people believed they came from the barnacle, the barnacle itself, the goose barnacle that was growing in bits of wood, and people had accounts of. And if you look at a goose barnacle, it actually looks like the beak of the bird.
Yeah.
So it's a quite an incredible sort of thing. They also, believe it or not, ate puffins. I love puffins and so on. They went out to Skellig Michael, they took the puffins, they salted them, and they tasted like fish, because puffins spent most of their life at sea, and therefore they were salted. Okay, there was other ones as well, which was great, which was they couldn't eat any dairy. So one of the really interesting things was that they had almond milk.
Where did they get the almonds?
Henry II brought in the almonds himself when he came to Ireland in the 12th century, right? So this was a normal thing. But in Ireland, we also had a cheat, because people would make what we call sowens. And sowens was made from oats. So you took your oats and you put it into water, You left it for about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, and it actually fermented, and it gave you this lovely alternative to milk. People used it in baking, people used it in everything, because they couldn't use it, of course, during Lent.
Yeah.
So this isn't a modern day thing at all, these milk alternatives.
Absolutely. No, we're well used to all of those sort of things.
Was that kind of like oat milk then? Was it?
That was kind of an oat milk and an oat milk idea. But listen, there's another little few things I want to point out to you. We had another thing as well in Cork. Okay, we had a famous bishop here in Cork, Cornelius Lucy, Connie Lucy as he was called, you know. And what happened is that you were only to eat on the black fast days. You were only to eat one meal in the day and 2 collations. And people in Cork were going like, what's a collation? I don't know what a collation is. So they sought some sort of knowledge of that. He came back, he said, a collation would be like a biscuit, for example. You could have 2 biscuits during the day. So what happened is that the bakeries around Cork, what did they start making? Well, they started making these ginormous biscuits all together. And they were known then as the Connie Dodger. Okay, dodging Connie Lucy's. So I just think they're great altogether. Those massive biscuits that came out, you know. Well, people give up everything, you know.
Yeah.
Like I was just talking about someone about sugar long ago, Dahi, you know. We'd put sugar in our tea, 4 or 5 spoons of sugar. A 2-pound bag of sugar wouldn't last you a night at all. People gave up sugar completely. They gave up the tobacco and the pipes long ago. They gave up, and long ago what they used to do is some fellas used to break their pipes. They used to break them in 2 so they wouldn't go near it. Other fellas used to put it up in the little caboochin beside the fireplace like that, and they'd be looking at it like, and that was their strength, that they wouldn't go smoking and so on. But people stopped card playing. They stopped dancing. They stopped music. They put away the squeeze box. They put away the box. They put away the fiddle. They put away all that. It was very, very strict. But the only breakout, of course, during Lent was, of course, Paddy's Day. Okay, and Paddy's Day was actually 3 days. They started off, they couldn't wait the night before the 16th, they'd break out the bottle, we'll say. You had it all day in the 17th, and if there was stuff left, of course, they'd go on for the 18th.
Just to finish it off.
Just to finish off. Actually, that 18th was known as Sheila's Day, so there was Sheila, so there was, and there was all sorts of tradition about Sheila, but the women in particular used to, if the men went wild on the 17th, the women could go on the 18th. But I thought what was really interesting is that there was a whole pile of traditions around that particular period of carnival, as you might call it. And I'd be looking at Rio de Janeiro, you'd be looking at New Orleans, you'd be looking at all the carnivals. I never thought that we had a carnival in Ireland. And even when I was looking at the parade going by, I never thought, that's our carnival.
It is, of course.
The abundance of drink, the mockery that goes on, you know, quite often in the floats that you get people giving out and so on. So we have our own tradition of carnival, and that was during the period of Lent when you'd relax everything and break out, you know.
Break out then after that.
And there was a straw figure as well, I believe.
Yeah. So listen, in my own studies and so on, you'd come across different traditions throughout Europe. In Britain in particular, you had a guy called Jack O'Lent. Now, who was Jack O'Lent? He was a little bit like the Kyloch we had long ago. He was the old straw. He was a straw man that was made up, and he had fish attached to him and so on. And people hated Lent, so they'd end up hitting him and whacking him, and they'd set him on fire, and they used to hang him, and they would kill him because they hated that figure. We had another figure in Ireland around Shrove Tuesday, which we called the Stococh. And the Stococh was like an old scarecrow, and you'd make this up, and what would happen is anyone who wasn't married before Lent, of course, because you couldn't get married during
Martin Henry was the last. Shrove Tuesday was the last day you could get married for a while.
That was it. But the Stococh would be put up in front of someone's door who wasn't married, and when they'd open the door in the morning, the straw figure would fall in the door, and there was a kind of an item of mockery and so on. So you couldn't get married during Lent. You had to get married before that. But you could break out and this is what's interesting. I was born on Christmas Day. And I was working this out to my own head, you know, doing my calculations. 280 days of whatever. I was conceived on Paddy's Day, you know, which is a kind. So there must have been a bit of relaxation, definitely, in and around the Lenten period for things to go back to normal. You know?
It might have been a 3-day festival, properly, Shane.
And I'd say my father's anyway, he'd have observed all of those traditions.
But was there something about getting your hair cut as well?
Yeah. So listen, the great thing is that you couldn't get your hair cut during Lent, and everything was finished because this was a time literally of no fertility, no anything. This was the stasis. I often think of the junction between Halloween, we'll say, and Bridget's Day, but this is another version of that. But getting your hair, nobody cut their hair, so they had big, long haircuts. then you had trimming Thursdays, it was called. Thursday night before Good Friday.
Yeah.
And you clipped your nails and you clipped your hair, and therefore ready on Good Friday, because everything from that point onwards was going to grow mad. So that was the idea. And
Okay.
I laugh as well. We out my way, we had one of the passion plays that was on. All the lads that time, they didn't bother getting their hair cut on Trimming Thursday. They kept to going for the passion play. You know.
Shane Lahan.
Incredible, Shane. Thank you so much.
Shane Gurmila.
Oh, my bad.
Always great to have you. Now it is competition time for you at home. And